Hello, everyone. I'm Lisa Simonian with the Neocon team, and I want to thank you for joining us for today's session with Eric, Marty, Bob, and Sharif on how other design sectors can influence the future of workplace design. First, just a few housekeeping items. This session qualifies for accreditation, and certificates will be emailed within 3 business days to anyone who stays on for the full session. If you have additional questions about accreditation, please visit the Neocon website under programming. Also, the final 15 minutes of the session will be a question and answer session. If you have questions that you would like to submit, please submit them via the Q&A box, not the chat box. So let's get started with a brief background on our presenters. Eric Yarroth is principal at Figure 3, where he focuses on the implementation of major workplace projects and specializes in the oversight and delivery of quality interiors in any commercial building type. Eric finds inspiration in helping designers and clients better understand how informed design can truly connect people with place. And he has worked with organizations including Coca-Cola Canada, Manulife, Unilever Canada, and Samsung. Marty Najafi is Director of Retail Design at Figure 3. He has a background as an industrial designer with extensive experience in furniture design, exhibit design, and fashion runways. Marty creates innovative and transformative retail experiences and has worked on many notable award-winning projects for clients, including TELUS, Certura Wellness, and Penguin Shop. Bob Fox is chairman and principal of Fox Architects, an integrated award-winning architecture and interior design firm in Washington, D.C. He is a leader in the industry and is well respected for his open-minded and innovative approach to workplace design. In 2010, Bob launched Work Design Magazine, a digital publishing group that has quickly become the source for next work environments. And Sharif Ayad is founder and president of ID and Design International, a world-class design and branding firm specializing in commercial mixed-use, retail, hospitality, lifestyle, and entertainment projects globally. Sharif's passion for iconic design, combined with a unique business approach to all design solutions, has been the cornerstone of the firm, whose clients include Hilton, Marriott, Starwood, Macy's, Whole Foods, Starbucks, Royal Caribbean, and LVMH Starboard, among many others. And now we'll pass the screen over to our presenters. Enjoy.
Thank you, Lisa. Eric with Figure 3 here. Thank you for the great introduction. I also just wanted to cover off that the reason that that this group are here today is also because we're all members of One Global Design, which for those in the audience who aren't aware, One Global Design is a strategic partnership or strategic alliance of best-in-class interior design firms, architects, and even engineers across North America, in the UK and in India. The alliance is primarily there for leveraging geographic locations to better service our clients in various geographies, but is also a tremendous source of thought leadership and subject matter expertise, hence the panel discussions like this. And I also wanted to identify that Bob is largely here for workplace perspective. Marty is obviously here from a retail design perspective, and Sharif is here to represent not just hospitality design, but even potentially the world of multifamily residential. And we're here to discuss a topic that actually grew out of an article that Marty authored not that long ago that was then published in Work Design Magazine on how retail design might better inform the design of the workplace coming out of COVID, understanding that the workplace coming out of COVID will very likely serve and function differently than it has before, and whether there are things that we can learn from retail design that might help designers in the workplace. And we're expanding that topic to consider also how the worlds of hospitality design or multifamily residential design might also influence how workplace designers think and approach strategically workplace projects. So I thought it would be best to start off. I'd like to kind of set the groundwork for this. And Bob, maybe we can revisit just what we think this workplace. A lot of people are coining it the hybrid workplace coming out of COVID. What the workplace is, we envision it being, and how it will have to function and behave differently.
Yeah, Eric, I think we're in a period now where there's lots of very rapid change. I recently looked at a report that was done back in October, and I was kind of surprised as I was reading it how much had changed since that report was written. I think we're looking at a range of options right now. We're going from fully remote to trying to get back to work, and I don't think the dust has settled. You mentioned some of the models that we're looking at. There's the hybrid model, which is kind of looking at people working both remotely and in the office. There's the hub and spoke model, which is kind of a centralized, primary office, and then, community related or community located places that are easy for people to get to. There's a lot of flexible work options. The number of days in the office is being evaluated. And I think we're going to be continuing to work from home in some form or fashion. So right now, I think there's a lot of challenges with just getting people comfortable with getting back into the office, I think from a health and safety perspective, but even just wearing a mask, I think, is a challenge. You'd much rather sit in an environment where you don't have to put the mask on, as opposed to sitting in an office where you're probably going to have to wear a mask. Agreed. And then things like public transportation and elevators, I think, are still, going to continue to be an issue. I think if you look at in the past, most of the deals that we all did were driven by efficiency, and, square footage per person or cost per square foot were the drivers for those. And now, I think if you step back and look at it, there's really no correlation to square footage per person measure to any business performance metric. And so no new metric has really emerged yet. And I think given the remote nature of work, most of us can work anywhere today. So I think the question I like to ask is that, in a world that offers all kinds of options and, we can work where we choose or where we like to work, why would we work here? Why do we come into the office? And so I think there's an opportunity now to take a look at the workplace as a real performance tool and, look at the things that we have to consider and that we need in order to do our best work. And those are going to be things that are either going to be too expensive, or they're not going to fit, or they're not going to be appropriate to put into our home office. I think you're going to see the technology continue to evolve on, Zoom and video interactions like this. And I think you're going to see other technologies and apps that come into the workplace that people are going to use for things like collaboration. So what I think we need to look at are, what people really need, for their best performance. And I think as an industry, we always have this tendency to want to standardize everything. And I think what you're going to see coming out of this are organizations saying, hey, you know what, we need to look at this particular aspect of how we work. That's what's going to bring our people. We need to support that fully. And I think you're going to start to see new metrics emerge, for that. If you look at something as simple as your car, you've got a fuel gauge, and it's probably a battery gauge now, and you have a speedometer. We don't really have anything like that for the workplace yet. So I think that, why do we want to work here? Why are we in the office? Those are central, I think, to every organization right now, and, issues that will become strategic to how they get people back into the office. So I hope that answers the question that you're.
Agreed. And I think part of that, if within that, we can all agree that I think companies will have to think harder in how if they're giving in order to attract and retain talent, if they're giving people that flexibility to potentially work outside of the office, they still need to justify the footprint of their office. So how do you change the dynamic to actually attract people to come into the office, and in that I think we're seeing a very different dynamic. Your point about how we measure the success of the or the efficiency of the office having to change is something else that I'd like to explore with the group further. As far as, you know, retail measures their success differently, hospitality measures success differently. So maybe from that, Marty, I wanted to ask, what are some of the things, and I know that we've talked about retail's inherent understanding of brand and what the power of brand in connecting people outside and within the retail environments, and also, you know, things like loyalty. How do you think, what are the things in retail design that you think that could contribute to creating this new dynamic of workplace?
Well, Eric, if we look back at the evolution of how e-commerce disrupted brick and mortar and physical retail, we can immediately pick up the learnings and apply them to workplace design post-pandemic. I believe that as the pre-2000 retail is unrecognizable to today's consumer, very soon the pre-2020 office will be unrecognizable to the future employees. Smart retailers, quickly as the Amazons and the eBays, the e-commerce platforms started coming to life, pivoted. They quickly moved on to the multi-channel approach. They brought online into their experiences, and the more progressive ones had an easier life in the pandemic because the Nikes and the Starbuckses of the world were already exercising pre-ordering and picking up in store from a convenience standpoint, and we're able to utilize that as a curbside pickup in many urban settings throughout North America. What we noticed was even brands that started as a full e-commerce platform very soon went from clicks to bricks, as we say, and evolved from online only to a physical presence. Why is that? Because, to your question, they very soon learned that in an online experience, there may be a convenience factor, but that connection with the brand and the consumers does not exist. They very also soon learned that like a lot of physical, tangible experiences that happen in a physical retail environment, like trying, tasting, touching, smelling, and sizing items, is not feasible in an online entity. Back to your measurement of success, retail back then was sales per square foot. Now retail, nowadays, experiential retail is how many times are my consumers or my focused target group going to come back into my space. So I think workplace is the same thing. The convenience of online is there. How can we pull our staff and our employees to come into the workplace, and what kind of experiences will we provide for them that is not necessarily able to be done in an online situation?
Agreed. And there's, I think we've discussed, four of us have discussed in the past the potential of the power of brand that's been learned within retail. In the last few years, we've seen examples like the Apple stores that have just mastered this understanding of brand on a virtual platform to connect consumers seamlessly and attract them to come into the facilities of Apple stores, not even necessarily to purchase product, but just to feel that they are interacting and part of that brand.
Yeah, and I think, just Marty, going back to your point about the brand and that experience, when somebody walks into the space, there's an opportunity there to communicate a message. What are the values of the organization? What is their mission, their purpose? What's the forward-looking vision? And the physical environment can also include artifacts that, reflect the culture of the organization or something about the business. And so, I think that, as each organization begins to rethink their space, they're going to have to take those kinds of considerations, into play so that the space is appropriate to what their people are, how their people are working.
It'll be interesting to see too how that transforms itself into the hub and spoke concept, where you bring that culture out to your workers versus the workers coming to the culture.
Yeah.
So
I think it's
an urban product. So.
I think it's key to understand here that, like, it comes as no surprise. Many studies have been done to understand what are the most important things that retain talent in a company. You know, and we all know that salary just ends up being sort of way down on the list. It's more about purpose. It's more about understanding their part in the company. And there's tremendous potential now, especially with a mobile workforce, and spending more attention on the brand integration of company, to use brand as a device by which to help people see themselves and their value within the company. So from retail, we can learn a tremendous amount from that within the world of workplace.
100%. Oh, sorry, go ahead. I was just within that line, I was going to add that well-designed retail experiences nowadays are sending that strong message and creating that human connection with their intended target groups. And they're not just selling stuff, because remember, we can buy stuff online from a convenience standpoint. How do we bring them back into the space? Is those kind of experiences that connect with our target group. And what are those powerful messages? Think of, they're not just selling, they're focusing on the lifestyle. Examples, great examples are Lululemon. They're not just selling yoga apparel, they're selling the wellness lifestyle. Or Nike, they're not selling sports goods, they're focused on the active lifestyle. And we can go on and on. IKEA, it's affordable design, furniture design, but they're selling the Scandinavian design lifestyle and going beyond furniture with food and naming and all those conventions. And Italy's another. Like, if we go through the roster of successful brands that are still existing and growing their footprint and their network, is that they're doing things right.
I agree with Marty 100% about what we can learn from, how e-commerce transformed the retail industry. But I think, Bob, to what you said, the dust hasn't settled yet. I think what we're about to find out is the dust is not going to settle where we would like it to. And the,
rarely does.
And I think exactly. And I think, we can talk a lot about how we want to make our employees feel and creating better workplaces. But the truth is, there's an underlying fear about the economics of the situation, just like there was in getting, graveyard shopping malls. And I think, and I'm going to get a lot of hate mail probably about saying this, but I think I'm not, I'm looking at the sort of maybe the doom and gloom side of office space and what that could cause. But the reality is, in retail, those who got creative succeeded. And the same thing has to happen here. We adapted as a culture, as the world adapted to alter our lifestyles to adapt to our work from home situation. Now let's see if workplace can adapt itself to the people. And certainly there are many factors here that we can learn from. I can tell you in my world, because workplace is a small portion of what we do. We have multiple studios at IDI, and so we do, cruise ship and entertainment, food and beverage, and multifamily and senior living, and a whole assortment of different market segments by studios. But what we learn from one studio, like Nardi said, what we learn from one studio, how that sort of helps us to, when I talk to clients, our multifamily clients, they don't really want to hear our multifamily stories. They want to hear our hospitality stories, because They know that there's learnings from our hospitality experience that we bring to the table.
And I think that appetite or increased understanding of hospitality, not just within multifamily residential, but a lot of people are wanting to learn from hospitality right now.
Correct.
Eric, let me go back to what Marty was saying earlier about that, experience and the message that the brand was trying to communicate. And I think translate that into the workplace, because, if you look at, take Google, for example, which just announced they're making a $7 billion commitment to their workplace. Here's an organization where, the culture, the work, the way that that organization ingrained people, into it, and the community that it built was critically dependent upon the environment that they had created. And Google started out with this very different kind of funky, fun, place to go work. And that is very much, endemic in the culture, behind that organization. And I think you see that in other technology organizations too. Facebook and Amazon, I think, are going down the same path. And when the whole remote thing came up, it's almost as if those organizations had a little bit of an identity crisis because they didn't know how to work. They were like fish out of water. And they needed that environment with which to communicate, build the social networks, learn how people, communicate and work together, and innovate. And, there's no technology that's really enabled us to innovate, in that same form yet. So I think it's a very close parallel to, what both Sharif is saying and what Marty described about the retail experience. It's all about, us as social animals collaborating and working together, to achieve the goals of that organization. And I think you're going to see the workplace take on that in a much more nuanced way as we emerge from the pandemic.
Yeah, I think also there's those who, we were all sort of forced to work from home. And I strongly believe that we're not going back to normal. The next generation will choose to work from home. And that generation is not going to put up with working at their kitchen table and breaking their back. That generation is going to want very highly comfortable professional equipment, professional environments where they can collaborate back with their hub office at a very professional rate. And so, and what's happening is developers obviously are seeing through this, and maybe I can explain to you a little later what's happening with the multifamily world and how we're developing communities that are catering to the future, the post-COVID work from home level. So that is becoming interesting, but also, something that was just said where, you're questioning whether you really need to be working back in that office again. The real question is, do we even need to be in the same city anymore? And people aren't questioning going back to the office. I mean, I can tell you, living here in South Florida, we have people flocking to South Florida because they're waking up in sub-zero weather going, you know what, I can work from anywhere. And I'm choosing, Arizona because I like golf. I'm choosing Florida because I want to be working on the beach. And that's really what's happening. So what you see I can just speak for Florida alone, and I sound like a spokesman for Florida, but we have tax incentives, we've got beautiful beaches, we've got a wonderful lifestyle, it's affordable, cost of living, etc. So it's a natural for guys from New York, an attorney from New York, to say, hey, you know what? I can be working out of my condo in Florida, and I have a membership at the country club. And guess what? My country club happens to be expanding this whole co-work environment. 5,000 square foot co-work space in the country club. So I can do Zoom calls from a phone booth. And this is really what's happening. So while we're talking about how to transform the next workplace, let's keep a close eye on what's happening outside of the workplace, because
that will just add to the competitive nature by which company owners need to figure out how they make this new workplace flex different muscles and attract their people to actually use it as that device. One of the other things
I was going to say, that's exactly what I referred to, about the nuance, because each organization is going to have to find what's suitable for their staff. So. Yeah,
I think it's going to be unique to some extent to particular cultures. One of the other things that we discussed earlier that I wanted to share and discuss more here were things like within the world of, maybe we start with retail, Marty. The evolution of the concept of loyalty or loyalty programs, which, as you've said, has changed dramatically recently. But I think executives of office staff within office spaces would be curious to know how are principles and strategies relative to loyalty programs applicable to creating, I'll say, loyalty amongst the workforce. to attract them to stay with a company or to come to a company?
Yeah, Eric, the evolution in loyalty in retail has morphed because the focus is mainly the new shopper. And loyalty in the minds of the new shopper is different than the previous generations. The new shopper is more after authenticity, like brands that share certain messages in their mission and vision statements or commitments, or any sort of advertisement they are sharing out there. They have to prove that they're really taking the right steps to prove to get to the
values align.
The values,
the
values align. And I see that same thing happening, at least in our culture, within the workforce. Like if people connect to a certain brand culture in the design world, that space, that studio would be more appealing for the younger generation to go and work there. What we're seeing here is loyalty is no longer about accumulating points or revenue. It's that connection, and the connection can be different. If for the Starbucks customers, it's that getting that unique menu item that no one else knows, and my dad doesn't know. He's ordering Americano, and I'm getting this unique new drink via my app, and I go to
so
the
it's
barista.
exclusivity.
It's exactly the new exclusivity, and for some is that deep-rooted, authentic messaging, and the big ones that come to mind is preserving the earth, global warming, and those kind of messages that brands like Adidas, Nike, and many more have picked up, and that's gaining a lot of traction.
So you hit on where we mentioned exclusivity. I wanted to also go back to Sharif. Within the world of hospitality, another thing that we've talked about is how sort of principles or concepts around membership or exclusive, which obviously the world of hospitality design are masters of. And how the design of hospitality space, how the amenities and the services within hospitality spaces could inform how executives might actually further or create this sense of exclusivity or membership as a further device to attract and retain talent and bring people into the office.
Oh, sure. Certainly in terms of the sort of the brand promise of the corporate culture, right? And like Marty said, I mean, if you compare it to, right off the top of my head, I mean, I can think of, 2 hotel flags that probably cater to the same age demographic, same professional status, but do it in 2 different languages, completely different languages, would be an Aloft Hotel and an Elements Hotel, right? Both targeting exactly, probably even the same construction budgets, but both targeting the same type of markets, but two different people within that market. And that's a brand promise that, you can live to, right? Wherever you go in the country. But certainly even the way we plan offices, it was everything we used to do or have done so far is relatively real estate driven, right? And we think of a place as sort of the reception area, the conference center, the executive offices, the workstations, whereas if you think of it more experientially, the way we do in hotel language, you arrive at the welcoming, right? You have a gathering space where people come as sort of the hub to interact with others, and it's kind of your social center, right? You have a refresh center where you rejuvenate, and you have a beverage, etc. And then you have, innovation labs where you can interact with others versus sitting in a station, in a workstation, right? And then there's the head down also areas, right? But I think the way we have to think about office workplace is going to lean much more towards sort of experiential spaces. That's sort of that hybrid that you mentioned early on of, how do we move from the situation we were in over the last year to now sort of adapting. How does the workplace adapt to this new hunger for a new type of experience? You know, there were some benefits in what happened last year, as much as we hate to admit it. And there's some new learnings, and they're not all bad, you know. And I mean, just simple example, like, you know, I don't have to sit in traffic to go to a 30-minute meeting, you know.
Hasn't that been great?
From one meeting to another, right? I believe it or not, I've become more engaged with our staff than I ever have been, you know, because
we can learn from that,
100% accessible all the time, you know, and I don't have to waste time at a coffee machine listening about somebody's dog, you know, what they do. So there is no buffer time. It's all business. But I choose the comforts that I want, and I choose the type of experience that I want to do business. And that's, you know, we really have to think through, learn from hospitality, learn from branding and retail world, right? How to build brand loyalty and adapt that somehow to this real hunger that people have for something new.
Sharif, if I can add to that, you know, last year Work Design Magazine ran the next work environment competition, and we're actually getting ready to launch the 2021 version of that. But some of the data that we collected from that was fascinating. And one thing that stood out for me is that the work environment was now more about getting together with people and connecting than it was about actually getting work done. And I think if you look at the work from home environment, you know, provided you've got a good, comfortable place to work that's quiet, you know, that's the environment that's probably going to provide you with the least distractions, the ability to concentrate and get work done. But, you know, we do, as a firm, we do a lot of office building designs. And one of the questions that I like to ask our developer clients are, you know, how do you drive value, you know, for that project? And I think what you're getting at is that sort of hospitality environment. For them, you know, that value aspect, I think, is all about building community.
Yeah.
You know, you want to be able to connect people. And so all of those spaces that you just described are conducive to that kind of interaction and that kind of behavior. And so I think what you're going to see is that the office building, well, and even the office space, I think, is going to evolve into this much more collaborative, highly interactive, you know, connecting type of environment, you know, and the work from home will become the, you know, the quiet, you know, high level of concentration type space.
I can't agree more.
That's what works with the hub and spoke concept, is that you can reach out into those communities and they can still work from home for those quiet times, but there's always that need to come into a close by office as sort of a hub, to as a kind of a branch that they can interact, have meetings, you know, touch point with the corporate culture. So,
well, the hub and spoke model, I think, is going to be really interesting. I'm really going to be curious to see how that plays out, because I think there's a couple of things that evolve or come out of that type of an environment. You know, if you look at in the past, you were essentially working with your team directly, you know, interacting directly with your team. You know, and so there was a lot of, I'll say, innovation that occurred within your own sphere. You know, if you look at the hub and spoke model, you're going to be working with people from other departments or other disciplines. And so the type of, you know, interaction and innovation that's going to occur from that, I think, is going to be much different than the innovation that occurred while you were working with somebody within your own team. So, you know, the other aspect of the hub and spoke model is that I think there's a lot of culture and community that's built in an environment where everybody comes in together, and there's a highly social, you know, team building, bonding, you know, piece to that. And I don't know how the spokes are going to, you know, sort of play that out yet. So I think for those organizations that move to the hub and spoke model, I think there's a lot to be learned from that concept yet. So, you know, I don't know how that's going to, it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out long term.
So one of the things that we've kind of constantly heard throughout this in an effort to, I mean, we've talked about, you know, concepts of loyalty programs within retail and how that can contribute to strategy to attract people to actually come to as well as the sense of exclusivity or membership. But it also speaks to, Bob, I think you said it earlier, thinking or understanding that the workplace, the workplace at large, the office itself just is a component of that now. It isn't all in of itself the office. So the workplace is now mobile, it's work from home, it's a number, it's a chemistry, and the office becomes a component in there. And you'd mentioned this interesting idea of space as a service and applying that to the office. So the office is no longer this mandated 9 to 5, you've got to be here, and I need to know you're here. It's the office becomes this to a service, almost considering the staff as the client. I wanted to sort of dive a little deeper into that. But what does that mean to designing space like this?
Yeah, no, well, I think what's interesting, as we've kind of gone through this whole pandemic and learning about new ways to work, the amount of variety of types of workplaces and the choices that we have, I think, are going to explode, coming out of the pandemic. So, I can work from home, I can work in the park outside, I can go to a co-working place, I can go to a Starbucks, I can go to the office, or I may go to a hub or some other, location. I think that's an ecosystem now that we have to look at to say, okay, how do we provide, the best tools and the best environment for our people to work in? I don't know that organizations are going to give people a lot of choice, but I think that, I think they're going to want to limit that so that they have people working together, that the teams are collaborating properly, the goals and objectives are being met, for that organization.
Needs to serve the company, right?
It needs to serve the company. I think it needs to, provide a healthy, comfortable, productive environment for the individual, because that ultimately serves the company. But it's not like, okay, you can take Mondays and Fridays off, and then we'll see you in the office on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I don't think that's going to thrive. But I think what you're going to see are there are places. So if you take a flex work or a co-working type of facility, a team may go locate there, and they may use that space for a period of time, whether it's a half a day for a meeting or, a month or two for a special project. So that's not going to be part of their, leased premises. So they're going to use that as a tool, and it's really going to be space that's provided to service that organization, for the specific task or project or work that's at hand. So I think you're going to see a lot more of that. I think while the co-working industry right now is struggling, I think that once we get beyond the pandemic, I think you're going to see the co-working industry take off and thrive, because
tremendously.
I think it's going to offer so many more, types of work arrangements that a typical office couldn't put into it.
And I know that we've all seen evidence amongst us that there are the co-working companies are the ones that are really thinking, are planning right now and repositioning themselves that way. But you can be sure that they will, the WeWorks, the Convenes of the world, will be contributing and raising the bar of what we've just talked about in the workforce, having that choice in where they want to work. They're going to be very selective now, as far as, I can now work in a place that offers these amenities or these services, these elements like hospitality. That's where I want to work. So they're going to raise that bar and subsequently the bar of the expectation within the office.
Well, I think it all goes back to
that. Companies.
It all goes back to that experience that people are going to have, and is that a productive, I'm going to get my work done experience? But is it comfortable? Are they going to have the food and drink that I want? Are they going to have the technology that I want? Are they going to have the audio visual components that I need? Are they going to have the concierge service?
Yep.
Will they park my car? Will they hang my coat? All of those things are going to be valuable to people that say, hey, I've got to focus. I've got to get work done. I've got a team coming in here. We have a limited period of time to do something, and we've got to be productive. So I don't want to be distracted by any other unnecessary, types of activities. So I think that's where those environments will thrive.
Bob, you said it. We can work right now with the technology available to us anywhere, and we can buy with the technology available to us anywhere as well, through e-commerce platforms. What makes us want to go back to a store? And that's what retailers have been challenged with is, and you touched on like-minded people, meeting like-minded people. And we shared examples like many successful retailers have put human-centered connections to the forefront, and they're creating environments for people that are well connected with the promises of that brand to go into that space and meet like-minded people. The examples we shared, like Lululemon, like if you're a yoga fanatic, that's where you meet like-minded people. Or you go into a Harley store, that's where you get a good engagement with a Harley fanatic. So bringing social to the forefront has been key to many brands that want to bring that exclusive connection to the forefront. Throwing in limited, not limited edition, but exclusive offers. And I want to tie it back to the office. What are the elements? Yes, social is a big thing, collaboration or informal learning or physical learning in an office space. But many retailers, you can only get this product if you step into their flagship store. So what could an office pick up from that, and what kind of services or exclusive touch points would be provided in the future office that would draw me from the places that I'm comfortable working with to go into the physical office?
Well, I think it's going to naturally be back to amazing collaborative facilities and interactive facilities, because everything else, it really doesn't matter which chair you're sitting in.
Yep.
And the ultimate purpose of the office is going to be, it might be smaller, but it's going to have to be a hell of a lot more efficient, a hell of a lot flexible and interactive and inspiring and experiential. And look, that's not good news for the leasing folks, but it's really damn good news for the design folks, because I think the opportunities now are endless, and now we're finally challenged to rethink the traditional urban office as we knew it.
Well, this is Sharif, where I think the industry's kind of, if you look at in the past, what I was saying earlier, I mean, we have a tendency to standardize everything.
Mhm.
And so, as a result, if you look at the topology of the type of workspaces that we have, up until, the pandemic, it was fairly limited. I mean, I think we saw an explosion of new types of collaborative spaces. But now I think what you're going to see is that, going back to Marty's point about, that experience and getting somebody back into the office, it's going to need to be, the most inspiring, best supportive, with the best tools, that you're going to say, I need to go in there to get my work done if I'm going to be productive.
But as importantly, it needs to be aligned with the brand and the values of the company. Exactly. So that people, because I don't think we're going to fall back into the world of, making sure, if we have a slide in our lobby, that's going to be that's going to be the saving grace. I think we've learned a lot from there. I think it's more about whether you're creating that chemistry and alignment with what the company values are, that's going to be equally as important in the workplace.
Well, the other thing I think, if you think about, this experience that we're having right now, we're really in the Model T of the Zoom era. And if you think about, what this experience is going to be like, I don't know, 5, 10, maybe 15 years from now, we're going to be in these immersive environments that have all of the information at our fingertips. I'll have charts and graphs. I'll, have all the plans and, things that I'll have, literally at my fingertips. And I may be in a room that's, acoustically controlled, has the lighting, has the microphones, has the speakers, has the audiovisual screens, so that, when I go in there with my team, it's like, bang, we're getting our work done. We have everything we need. It's well organized, and I've got all the technology and, high bandwidth speed that I need in order to get that work done. So I think you're going to see this experience evolve very rapidly in the workplace, and you're not going to be able to afford to put that into your work from home, situation. It's going to be a very expensive, at least initially, proposition. And so that's an opportunity that the workplace has, because people are going to say, hey, I need to go there to get my work done.
That experience that you're talking about in e-commerce has evolved. Right now, you can buy furniture and through VR, look through your cell phone and place that furniture in the corner of your room, change the fabric and whatnot. They have evolved and they've learned. But e-commerce also learned that there are things that cannot be replaceable than a physical space. And I touched on it. Things like trying, tasting, touching, smelling, or sizing items. Those are the things that workplace needs to learn. What are those experiences that people will be missing from a technology aspect? I personally think that human connections would be in the forefront. We are social beings and we thrive for that.
I wanted to be cognizant of the time, but it's been a fabulous conversation so far. There are some questions that have come up that I wanted to give some attention to. The first I'm seeing here, I certainly don't know that we'll get to all of them, but there was a question at first that was really quite intriguing in and around inclusivity and inclusion. And the viewer writes, doesn't the idea of exclusivity go against the idea of diversity and inclusivity in the workplace? How do we maintain this culture and foster loyalty and exclusivity? So I think, you know, given where we are today, yes, certainly has to be considered. And I don't know that the exclusivity that we're talking about is exclusionary. It's about, you know, once you are an employee, how do you feel or feel part of something in a bigger way? But does anybody want to expand upon that?
Eric, I think, I mean, I'll take a shot at that, but, you know, it comes down to the team or the department or the group, you know, that you're working with. So it could be a project team and that could be, you know, involving consultants. You know, I think that there's a lot of interaction that has to take place in that type of environment. And I think you're going to want to service that environment as best you can so that team remains as productive. I think it's like you said, I don't think that's to intentionally exclude any group. I think that, you know, in today's environment, you know, we need to experience different cultures. We need to experience different ideas. You know, that's how we're going to innovate. You know, if we're working with the same people with the same values all day long, you know, we're going to be producing mediocre, you know, designs or mediocre work. So I think we need to embrace that diversity and that inclusivity, you know, but I think it may be exclusive to a project or a team or a department or the type of work being done.
Agreed. Another question here, since you are all in the design field, how do you foresee fostering collaboration among your design team studios in the post-COVID hybrid workplace?
Well, maybe I'll take a step at that. I'm on Zoom literally from morning till night, and I'm a very visual person. I don't like long drawn out descriptions of things. I'm like, show me, don't tell me. But we've learned to adapt, and we've learned like every tool in the book. I mean, I'm using Zoom tools like little silly annotation tools to create illustrations while I'm talking to people. We do what we can, but there's nothing that replaces a roll of tissue paper and sitting across the table from somebody and working out solutions. So I'm anxious for us to get back to that. But I think we've done pretty damn well over the last year, and I think I can speak on our part. Our design teams have done a phenomenal job of really using every tool in the book to communicate on a regular basis. We've had construction sites, even send us videos of site conditions and walkthroughs of construction sites. I mean, here internally, the design process has not stopped. Our library, we've put up acrylic panels in our library so that, we can still interact as needed. Although we've been home since March of last year and still are, by the way. But we've learned to adapt. There's a lot of tools, there's a lot of technology that we can use to sort of communicate very fluidly.
There's another question here. I'm jumping around a bit, sorry. Do you see companies investing the home in the home office for the employee to enable them to work safely at home? I know that this has been a question amongst big question in understanding the future flexible workplace. Big discussions amongst HR facilities people as to how their roles and their responsibilities may now extend to understand that full-time employees, not just contract employees, but full-time salaried employees, or the workplace now potentially extends into the home. Bob, I don't know whether you've heard similar discussions amongst some of the executives you speak to about concerns there as to how the commitments of a company extend to the home office.
Yeah, Eric, no, I was part of it was an HR panel discussion not too long ago, and I was actually impressed. Most of the HR leaders, their organizations had committed some dollar amount to give to people to improve their home work environment. I think if you look at what's happening in the workplace, you're seeing a very wide range of solutions, I think, to those organizations that are saying, hey, we're going to stay remote, to other organizations that are going to say, hey, we're coming back. And I think you're going to see everything, in between. And so I think that, we need to start thinking about that home work environment almost as an extension of, the traditional workplace. Because somebody's going to be working there a couple of days a week. So I think you will see organizations say, that, they can essentially reduce their office costs. And what I would hate to see is organizations trying to push people out of the office into remote locations simply to save money on their office expense, because I don't think that's going to work either.
Right.
But I do think you're going to see organizations saying, hey, we'll contribute something to the employee to make them more productive in their work from home environment.
At least the bare minimum of, ergonomically good chairs and, good equipment. And that's
I'll tell you, the biggest challenge across the board for everybody that I've talked to is bandwidth and internet speed.
Bandwidth.
Yeah, that's been huge. Yeah, the technology, the trying to identify the responsibility around the weakest chain in that link is a bit of a trick. Marty, maybe this is one for you. How do you view pop-up brand experiences being a post-COVID opportunity?
Pop-up's all about testing the market and your target group. So because we're in uncertain field right now, I think pop-ups have always been a great approach to test and experiment and R&D for brands. It's a shorter commitment. It's not a brand expansion. It's not a rollout. If designed correctly, it can move from point A to point B and be a testing platform in different locations. And I think it will pick up. It has already picked up. A lot of urban evacuated retail locations here in Toronto have been leased to temporary pop-up, and we're seeing that grow.
If I could just real quick interject, I think the workplace pop-up version, I immediately think of co-working environments and where you don't have to commit to a year of construction and 5-year leases and all that. So I think, if you need 30 people to plug into a location for a 6-month period and you want to do it next weekend, that's your solution. That's sort of the workplace pop-up, right, version. And it gives you that opportunity to do instant, ideation laboratories anywhere in the country, if not anywhere in the world, within a week's notice.
Sharif, my mind went immediately to the funky Airstream trailer that I could take anywhere and park wherever I need to get work done.
There you go.
There you go.
It's in your backyard right now. Right.
There you go.
Last one, maybe. I have found that Zoom distance working has put a damper on work social capital. Any thoughts on that? Don't all jump on that at once.
You know what? I'll share with you one of the jurors for us on the next work environment competition is Ben Weber with a firm called Humanize. And they've done a lot of research about the connectivity of people, and the people that worked closely together in the workplace pre-COVID were the ones that had the strongest relationships and maintained the highest level of interaction during COVID. So, I think, you're going to continue to see, that kind of interaction. So, for people that didn't interact very much in the office, that's where the breakdown, there was less interaction among those people that didn't interact very much.
Well, with that, gentlemen, I think I've been given a 5-minute warning, so I think I might turn it back over to Lisa, but I want to thank you all for a fantastic conversation, and look forward to continuing the conversation amongst the four of us and see where it goes.
Thanks, this was fun.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. That was a great program, and thank you to everybody for attending. I do know that Work Design Magazine will be working on a follow-up piece to this discussion. We will make sure that they receive the questions that we weren't able to answer, and maybe those can be folded into the work design piece, and we'll make sure that everybody who has registered receive that article within the next couple of weeks. A recording of this session will be available on the NeoCon website in the next couple of days. And we have one final program running in this series that starts at 1 p.m. Central on the changing face of design. So we hope that you will join us for that as well. So thank you, everyone.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Bye.